G'day, friends and fans. We are on the precipice, the doorstep of catastrophe. We cannot understate how dangerous Ukraine is right now. Zelensky went to the UN, cap in hand, asking for weapons, sanctions against Russia, and war against Russia. This is a catastrophe. The man's a lunatic, but he is backed by worse lunatics. And until every single warmongering European fascist is out of office, you will continue to have the problem of Euro-fascism. And fascism, my folks, is and only is on the left. Russia has stated that it has been given no choice but war after Trump's U-turn on Ukraine. What feels like a betrayal, the Kremlin says that US-Russia talks now yields close to zero as fears grow in Europe of a Ukrainian spillover. The Kremlin says it has been given no alternative to continue war after a push from Zelensky that United States President Donald Trump has decided to go with Ukraine and brand Putin as a paper tiger. Dmitry Peskov has hit back at Trump's claim that Ukraine could effectively win the war, declaring that Russia will continue its offensive to ensure our interests and achieve our goals. People forget, and I remind you, Russia is backed by the BRICS, not just by China. Every BRIC is gearing up and exporting materials to Russia. Sanctions are not working. They are not going through US banks. They're not going through US controlled banks. They are de-dollarizing, and the gamble of President Trump is, well, exactly that, a gamble. I know it'll upset Trump supporters. It'll upset Putin supporters. Heck, there is no good news today. Everybody's going to be upset by the war of words, the rhetoric, and the lack of results. The only people who are going to be happy are the pro-war Ukrainians and the Trump haters, who have worked day and night to sabotage peace. This falls directly on Europe, particularly Keir Starmer, and those in America, particularly in the US Senate, who want war. The neocons and the liberal warhawks. Fighting continues. Ukraine continues to lie about the war and deny that they're in a bad position. Here he is, surrounded by sycophants and cocksuckers alike, who seem to have no will of their own. Everybody seems to be in this collective state where they have to kiss this shite's ass and give him everything he wants because of some bullshit political agenda within the UN. Trump has stated that the US will continue to supply weapons to NATO and they can do with them what they want. Of course, NATO said they're going to give them to Zelensky. Give, by the way. Zelensky said he was surprised and it's a very positive signal that the US will be with Ukraine until the end of the war. that this is a game changer. Meanwhile, Europeans have destabilized Europe and continue to bleat about Russian warplanes. Yes, Russia made a huge mistake. They also gambled. They thought that they could pressure NATO by reminding them that Russian long-range bombers can appear anywhere and any time. But look at Zelensky. He's bored out of his brain, disrespectful as usual, waiting to be the centre of attention. Complete and utter narcissist. No wonder they chose a comedian. It's one step down from an actor. Jimmy Kimmel will be sitting there going, Jesus, my turn next. Meanwhile, the battlefield realities continue. And the reality on the battlefield is there is no successful Ukrainian offensive since 2024. Russia continues to fight and has expanded the Sumy buffer zone, not by much. Now, the buffer zone north of Kharkiv has not moved in a long time, but the buffer zone over here north of Kupiansk has moved and has grown. The battle continues in Kupiansk. The Russians now control the main road into Kupiansk from the north, but roads remain open to the east and west, though it's south, sort of, as you can see. Alright, so we go to the area north of Neumann, and there is little movement, probably just a growth spurt, probably just crossing a line here in Novinska. Nothing really, crossing the bridge, or fighting over the bridge. Same here, fighting shifted to south of the town. Parts of Zakrin have fallen to the Russians. There's a little bit of movement north of Silvesk. As we move to south of Silvesk and Chevashar, there really isn't much to report. Now let's look at the siege of Kost and the surrounding area. There has been some territory taken by the Russians, not much. The area here continues to expand. As I said, fulfilling Russia's goal of bringing up more men and equipment to pound these towns from multiple directions. However, the siege in multiple areas, particularly Popovsk, is a slow grind, and of course this has emboldened both the Ukrainians and the Americans to believe that Ukraine will, with its 1.3 million troops, will defeat Russia. Russia only has 600 to 700,000, depending on the reports. I would lean to more 700,000 in Ukraine, but about 150 to 200,000 of those are local volunteers. But they are trained by the Russian army. Now, Russia has taken more territory here in that's Donetsk. Is it Donetsk? Zaporozhye and Donetsk, yeah. So they've taken more territory here in Donetsk and a little bit over here in Zaporozhye. Now, as you can see, This is odd. What's this? Violent explosion was reported in Holovinka. Again, most of the photos are all the same. They show an explosion in the distance. That was obviously a school. Only women and children died. Obvious. Russia's losing. Because Zaporozhye fighting and shelling and glide bombs, more drones indeed. Though Ukraine claims to have shot most of them down, back to the usual. Of course, they continue to attack Russia and provoke Russia, claiming to have hacked the Russian Ukrainian military intelligence has apparently hacked the authorities of Crimea. Goody, you got the school lunch menu from a Russian school. Congratulations. Fucking morons. You know, with hacking, you never know when you get fake information. This has happened to North Korea now more than you think. I remember reading about, I'm not sure, was it Oracle? They have a special server just for hackers. This server is called a capture. It actually is way more secure than your average server, right? But it deliberately slows everything down, and it records every keystroke, every I/O. It records and analyzes everything. And of course, the information on these servers is absolute bullshit. Now, yeah, there's some hacks that are successful, and every day hacking goes on, and sooner or later the internet is going to become a place of zero trust, where everybody is just basically going to be running virtual machines. Computers need to change dramatically. Security needs to change dramatically. But the government, because of their desire to peek over your shoulder and over each other's shoulders, have made sure that everything's hackable. But sooner or later, and this is actually one of the stated goals of some of the hacker groups, is to make the internet so unstable that they have no choice but to patch out all the security holes. Deliberate security holes. Now, the Kremlin has slammed Trump. Trump, of course, has stated that the Ukrainian conflict has a long time to go, that Russia has a very large army, that it will not end soon. After his meeting with Zelensky on the sidelines of the 80th session of the UN at New York. Right, so as I said, Zelensky went cap in hand, asking for another $15 billion, believed to be at least only gotten 5, and Russia estimates actually they're going to need at least 60. As Ukraine spends between $1 and $2 billion a month just on ammunition alone, well, supplies, but primarily ammunition. Now, Zelensky has decided he's going to control your foreign policy, that he, a comedian with no prior experience, is suddenly an expert on India. I don't claim claim to be an expert on India. But in an interview with his absolute, what do you call it? What do you call when somebody is an idiot? The arrogance, the confidence of an idiot. Gosh, they did the makeup well on his nose. Look at that port nose, eh? Gosh. You can fit a whole brick of Colombian powder up those nostrils each. Alright, so you all know that New Delhi is and has been for quite some time a Russian ally. They helped India with its independence movement. They helped arm India. They helped train Indian army. They helped India rebuild its economy. India helped Russia found BRICS along with Brazil. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, with South Africa added last. But there are now more than 28 countries who want to join the BRICS bloc and join in de-dollarization. Zelensky, however, seems to think that India is mostly on Ukraine's side, just like Antifa is mostly peaceful, just like BM is mostly on Donald Trump's side. Mostly. This man is delusional, but he has the confidence of an idiot. That I will repeat the line often enough that it might just come true. Wishful thinking is actually more common than you think. Fake it till you make it. But, of course, he's relying on President Trump. It's not really that he's accusing India and China of funding the Ukraine conflict. Well, wait a minute. Isn't Europe funding the Ukraine conflict through you little muppet? Gosh, they're such hypocrites. Cry harder. Stop worrying what the other side is doing, okay? Everybody should worry about the immorality in Ukraine. Everybody should worry about the corruption in Ukraine. Fix your own fucking backyard. Okay? You have no idea how bad things are in Ukraine because so many politicians out there are in love with this pathetic cretin who is marching the world to war because he doesn't give a flying fuck. He's Zelensky. He's immune. He's protected. He's one of the ruling class now. He gets to do as he pleases and get away with it because he can snap his fingers and his secret police will round up any witness against him. He's no better than Xi Jinping. Actually, scratch that. At least Xi Jinping has a clear policy. This guy doesn't seem to have a clear policy. Next he's going to talk about Iran. Oh, wait a minute. He's thinking Iran is unlikely to side with Ukraine because of its adversarial relations with the US. No, bro, they're Russian allies, you freaking idiot. India is unlikely. Neither is China. Wow, this guy's a freaking genius. However, Ukraine has fallen short again on this year's budget and has asked the IMF for another bailout. Kiev has spent 60% of its budget on the conflict, most of which comes from Western aid, and of course relies on Western aid to fill the gaps, including guarantees for a $15.5 billion IMF loan, which has been extended multiple times since 2023. The G7 are using the profits from Russian assets to prop up Ukraine. And Ukraine has conceded that it needs yet another bailout. This is what, its third? Now, Brussels have backed a plan to steal Russian money using a secured loan of $50 billion paid for with the interest from Russian assets. Which is why more and more countries are reluctant to deal with the West, because if they don't like you, they'll sanction you, steal your assets and give it to Ukraine so they can piss it all away. And here's Ukrainian youth being lined up to be pissed away on Zelensky's ego. To take back territory, to do what? What are you going to do with the people there? That's the question they won't answer, will it? The people who support Russia are in the Russian side of Ukraine. What is Zelensky going to do to the Russians? Well, what did he do with the 35% of ethnic Russians in Western Ukraine? How is that number magically zero? Yeah, you'll talk about ethnic cleansing for mass deportations, but you won't talk about ethnic cleansing in Ukraine. The hypocrisy seems to know no bounds anymore. The world is degenerating so fast because we must win. The win at all cost mentality. Now there is some hope, friends. Lavrov is to meet with Marco Rubio. Both of them, I think, cooler heads in the room. And of course, it's not all Zelensky's way. America did call on the UN Security Council, Russia and Ukraine to do everything to end the conflict. But it came from Marco Rubio. So we do have mixed messages from the current administration. All, of course, designed to put pressure on Russia, of course. There is no doubt that Trump wants a win. But this reminds me of when Nixon sat at the Oval Office and he asked the Pentagon about the situation in Vietnam. And they lied through their teeth. They lied about the casualties. They lied about everything. In fact, there are so many lies told that we know that generals undermined each other because they wanted an army victory. They didn't want an Air Force victory. They didn't want the Navy involved. Yet the Navy had conducted several successful offshore artillery strikes, which had diminished the North Vietnamese, severely limited their operation capabilities. The Air Force had, without going illegally into Laos or Cambodia, had conducted many successful operations. Plus, specialists hired in other countries to deal with the situation was under control until a bunch of fuckwits decided, nah, let's get rid of the successful generals because it's ruining my image. Yeah. The Vietnam War was lost because an American general had his ego fucking bigger than his head. Couldn't stand the fact that the army wasn't winning the war. Well, the army you sent was hardly fighting the war. The armies you sent to Vietnam were hardly fighting the war. Most of them didn't want to fight. Most of them were expending hundreds of rounds of ammunition to hit the broadside of a barn. The Marines were effective, so they got taken out. Air cavalry was effective, so they got sidelined. We'll see this in somewhat in the conflict, particularly in Afghanistan, with the Russians, again, trying for a political victory. We saw this with LBJ trying for a political victory, sidelining many successful operations. We saw this with Carter, sidelining successful operations to go for political victories. Most of these political victories fail. Well, while Trump may have gotten political victories in some areas, it's the scale. It may be easier to solve. This may sound weird, but it may be easier to solve old, long-running, small-scale conflicts, which are far more complex than large, simple conflicts that are recent. Although North Korea, again, is an example of a simple conflict which could be resolved, but they make it complicated. All you have to do is let North Korea be isolated. Just sit there and watch them burn out. Don't undermine. Let them burn out. They've got to learn communism has to burn people to the bone before they'll give up communism. And even then, you'll have the diehards who stay there till the end. But North Korea, China, all these countries, you let them burn out on their own. You let them destroy themselves. Mandami. If enough people got out there and told the truth about Mandami, he'd be out of office. The problem is messaging. And Ukraine is sending out the wrong messaging. Trump right now is is too busy trying to achieve a end to the Ukraine war without realizing what the implications for the method he is choosing. Trump calling Russia a paper tiger ain't helpful. Emboldening Ukraine to continue wasting manpower. That's not good. But of course, part of the problem is Europe will not give up its war. Europe wants its war. But as Hungary said, if there's a war, it's not Paris that's going to be burned, it's Budapest. It's Hungary. It's Slovakia. It's all this. Poland. Ukraine. Belarusia. Budapest is Romania, Bulgaria, Serbia. All of this will burn for a net zero, for more lives lost needlessly and useless, just so a bunch of boring suits can sit in their office and play war games. Because it's a laugh. They want to feel something. They want to feel important. They want to feel like a big man. They want to go out and walk the streets and see a prostitute under every street lamp. have black markets run black market goods. Play silly childish spy v spy, because heaven forbid they get a hobby like a video game or play a tabletop game. Nah, they want to do it in real life because they think they're winners. They want to prove what big men they are. Mostly driven by a lady behind them, urging them on, of course. Every psychopath has its sociopath. Peace, as I warned you time and time again, will only come when you're willing to put your vote on the table and say to the person in the office, you support Ukraine, yes or no? And when they say yes, you put your vote or say, I'm going to primer you out, and actually do it. If these people fear getting primaried out of their until you put the fear of the electorate, until the electorate puts the fear of the ballot box into the hearts and minds of every politician, they're going to walk all over you. Now, I have no answer what to do with a second-term president. Perhaps, however, if you make those around him fearful of their careers cut short, then perhaps we might actually get some peace in Ukraine. Because until Zelensky has no support, he won't stop. He's made it quite clear that he is on the path to war. And Ukraine has to burn to learn the most awful lesson of them all. War is hell. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and please support the channel. You can support me on Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, or in my profile. Of course, you can always scan the QR code on the screen right now. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. See you in the next video, and bye for now.